What is up, BookTube? It's Monty, and today I'm back again, once again, with the start of another video. I already did a little introductory moment where I explain why this is a thing, and I give my first thoughts. But I wanted to have this as like a nice little actual intro with like the quality camera, and then we can throw in the little interstitial like I did for my buzzwordathon situation. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna pass it off to Past Monty, and he's gonna explain why everything's happening.
I said that I was done with reading vlogs, and when I made that video how about they fucked up my reading and that you were going to get 2 more out of me, you were getting my buzzwordathon, which is out. You can watch all 3 hours now, and a babble vlog, because both of those were filmed before I swore them off. I really stood by that. Also, you might hear some cars going by in the background, but I am parked, obviously, but it's too hot for me to be sitting in here. So apologies for the audio quality that this is going to be. I'm not gonna die because I decided to actually vlog. But I started reading The Love Hypothesis by HAZELWOOD. But I finally bit the bullet because earlier this year, for some reason, I was like, you know what? I'm going to request Love on the Brain on NetGalley. Why? I don't know. But I did. I went over and I clicked request, and for some reason, that request got approved. And so Love on the Brain has been sitting on my Kindle for months. 4 months it has been sitting there. And I just kind of, forgot about it because it was like, well, I'm here now. Wouldn't be the first arc I've received and not read. But then like a week ago, the publicist emailed me, and I'm assuming like this was a blanket form, like email thing, inviting me to be on the blog tour for Love on the Brain. And I was like, wow, you're right. I do have that arc, don't I? I don't think that would be a good opportunity for me because I haven't read it yet. And so like, I can't promise to give you a review that would be worth, because in my mind, if you're going to do like a promotional tour for the book, it should be generally positive. It should be at least a 3.5, 4-star. Like, you might have some issues with it, but you had a good time. You feel really confident promoting the book. So obviously I have just left that email marked unread because I was like, I'm not gonna confirm, deny anything, so leave it and let it fade away into the background until I read the book. But I've been thinking, I'm like, I have some time. Let me read Love on the Brain. But to read Love on the Brain, I was like, maybe I should start with The Love Hypothesis, get a feel for HAZELWOOD. And this is where we are. So I got the ebook from my library, which I was gagged by because even the ebook, I got it here in Kansas. I didn't use my LA card. But it's pretty popular still. Like, you can't get this book like just walking into the library, right? So I checked out the ebook, and I've been having Siri read it to me, which was put on to me by a couple of people. Because I used to in 2021 mostly, I was like deep in my romance booktuber bag, and everybody has like Siri read them their ebooks. They have Alexa read them their ebooks. Like, the romance girlies, if you need like tips and tricks and hints and shortcuts, well, I don't want to say shortcuts, but like ways to like make your reading life easier, the romance girlies got your back. I digress. So I've been having Siri read it to me, and I'm over 100 pages now. I was reading it over breakfast, and I have to say that the book isn't horrible, but it's also just weird. And I don't think it's weird in like the way that everyone else thought it was weird, because I really don't care that she sat on his lap at that talk. When people talk about that scene, was it a professional setting? Sort of. But it was really just an event that happened to be at the school. It wasn't like, maybe there's gonna be another scene where she's gonna sit on his lap again, but it was like, I don't know if that was the moment y'all were telling me was supposed to be like horrible or whatever. The horrible part of that scene to me was when he joked about making a Title IX complaint. The first time he did it at the beginning of the book, I thought it was reasonable because he actually was assaulted. Like, she definitely assaulted him. And they kind of talk about it, and it doesn't seem to be an issue for him. But it's like, the book very clearly starts off with assault, which is weird and wild. And I also think the book starts off with a version of Olive that just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So the book starts, one, with like this weird preface that is supposed to like show that Adam has like this really soft side, because even though she has like lost her contacts or whatever, I think the reader is supposed to instantly recognize that this is going to be the love interest later on in the book, and there's probably going to be a moment in the third act where she puts... Olive is also just fucking stupid when it comes to people. She didn't put together that that person in the bathroom was Adam. She didn't put it together that the person that Adam has, like his collaborator, is the person that she's been emailing. Both of those I thought were very obvious, and I think that those were kind of like the moments where, like, yeah, I can see how this was fanfic. Wasn't bad fanfic, like these were good elements. Like like that's why the editor, when it got to the traditional publisher, was like, yeah, we can keep these in. But it was giving fanfic, like it was giving what it needed to give in order to get the clicks on AO3. But I digress again. So she's in the lab, and it's midnight, we find out. She's in this lab hella late, which weird, but whatever. So she's in the lab late, and she's like, oh, I really need my friend to believe that I'm over this man who she went on like 3 dates with. She went on a date with Jeremy like 3 times, which is weird. And then what was the part about this whole setup that doesn't make sense is that Jeremy and Anne are on... Siri is reading the book to me, and I don't believe Siri's pronunciation. But like Siri and her best friend. Jeremy and her best friend, this was like their third date, mind you. They're being fucking Olive and Jeremy. They've gone on like 3 dates. Can't be any more than 5, because she's only been on 5 dates in her whole life. So I'm gonna go with 3. Been on 3 dates. On the third date, Jeremy is shamelessly flirting with Olive's best friend in front of her at an event, at a function that Olive invited him to. And yet this friend is supposedly so torn up about this relationship that Olive is in that she's like, oh, I can't be with him because he's your ex-boyfriend. But it's like, bitch, you were literally flirting with him on my date. Like, I was on a date. We were in the middle of our talking situationship, whatever they were classifying it. They were on the date, and you were flirting. You were homie hopping in an active... Like, it was weird, right? So this idea that this girl is like, oh, I can't date him, he's your ex-boyfriend, bullshit. Then when Olive sees her and she's like, oh, I need to make her believe I'm gonna kiss this random person. Fucking foolish. It was foolishness. Specifically because it wasn't... Again, because she'd only ever been on 5... We find out later she'd only been on 5 dates in her whole life. And like 3 dates max with Jeremy. It's like the connections weren't strong. Like, I needed this to be like her ex-fiance level, right? Like, they had dated their entire undergrad situation, or they dated the whole previous academic year. Like, this was a real meaningful connection for these two people, and it wasn't that. So it's just like, why are we doing all this? This is another reason why I don't like single perspective romances. It forces the reader to just kind of guess as to what Adam is thinking, why Adam is going along with this, because the Adam that we get both in the preface and with her doesn't seem to fit with the person that he is at all, which is fine in like when you're reading a fanfic. Like, you're reading about these... This is Raylo fanfic, right? So his entire personality and everything goes from the canon universe of the Star Wars sequel trilogy to the fanfic, filtered through this lens of an academic higher education setting, right? That's perfectly fine. But once you have taken that fanfic and you have repurposed it and retooled it into a piece of original fiction, those original motivations that your fan fiction reader had that were able to just be glued onto Adam, because you're like, okay, what would Kylo do in this? And even then, I don't understand I don't understand the Raylos. I don't get y'all. I don't get it. But what y'all do, you, right? But once you have removed the fan fiction from it, and it is a piece of original fiction, and you no longer have those motivations, and the reader has to actually bring everything to the table, this book just is... The math isn't mathing. And I need chapters from Adam's point of view to understand why he is doing these things, why he is feeling these things, how he just happened to meet this random girl in the bathroom and was like, that's the girl for me, and he's been pining after her forever and ever. I find that very weak. But the book itself isn't horrible. Like, it's not a horrible book. It's very middling. It's a 3-star read. Some maybe 2.5. It's again, it's that straddling the line of like, how generous do I want to be? Do I want to round up? Do I want to round down? But I kind of see elements that people would enjoy. But for me, the fact that the math doesn't math is really making me annoyed, because I like the math to math a little bit, and it's not all the time. Also, I just want to say that I don't appreciate a lot of these side characters. Olive's best friend, Anne, who is like the Rose Tico stand-in in this fanfic, don't like her here. Don't like her here. I mean, I think that Rose Tico got drugged around dirty by the Star Wars fandom. They took hold of her little pixie cut and they dragged that poor woman. But I think that Allie Hazelwood clearly did not like Rose Tico. Really did not like her. She's boring here. Malcolm as our Finn stand-in, he has me side-eyeing. He's the black character who just fucks around with everybody. I don't get it. And then Olive was like, oh, well, he would obviously forgive me even though I'm doing him dirty. I don't know why you think he would forgive you when you're doing him dirty, but whatever, ma'am. What else is there? There's Jeremy. That's the part that really said Jeremy as the General Hux stand-in. People out here writing Rose Tico General Hux. I've seen everything. So yeah, it's a weird experience. The side characters, I think we could do more. They feel like a bunch of stereotypes. That's what's rubbed me, like specifically Anne and Malcolm. They feel like stereotypes to me. They don't feel like real people. They feel like a collection of Asian stereotypes for Anne, and Malcolm as this hypersexualized big black man. Weird, don't get it, not vibing with it. And then Olive is like this odd contradictions of, I'm gonna start the book off sexually harassing my co-person in this environment, and then on every page it's a new insecurity. It's like, ma'am, you have a degular degree, you have a master's degree, you are pursuing a PhD, you have interest from a collaborator at Harvard, like, you are good at what you do. And so when the moments where Olive was like standing up for herself, love it. The moments where she is just like, oh, I'm a shriveled shell, it's weird. Like the babification of Olive is wild to me. And I think that's another thing that's like, you wrote this as Raylo fanfic, but Ray as a protagonist was very active. She was very invested in herself. Like, and you took Ray and you did that. That might be the biggest plot twist of them all. It's like you didn't see nobody that you couldn't do dirty, except for Adam. Adam is a weird case, but again, we're never in his head. So it's hard for me to hate him because I only see him through everybody else, and everybody else can't seem to decide on who he is.
Y'all, I was going to tweet, and I said, why tweet what you can vlog? Because right now I'm currently like 62% of the way through The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. And I want to say that it takes balls. It takes fucking courage to do what Allie Hazelwood is doing. Because the entire book, we have been making ha-ha and he-he jokes about fucking Olive sexually harassing Adam. That was a little ha-ha, he-he, jokey joke, a little inside moment between the two of them. Like, oh, you're gonna have the biggest, fattest Title IX complaint. Oh, aren't you just love how I sexually harassed you when we met. And it was weird. Okay? Like, you can argue, you can have all these discussions, these theoretical situations, whatever the fuck. The point still stands that they've been making real light of the boundaries that this woman has been violating. And then we violated more boundaries when it came to getting a flu shot. I thought that was a weird addition. A weird, like, the entire book had just been like these weird little moments, right? But it takes fucking, and that also took balls to like drag somebody to go get a flu shot. Wild. The whole situation was stupid. Anyway, but here we are, 63% of the way through the book, and we have Olive, who is presenting her little like research or whatever. I don't think we really see Olive doing science a whole lot. Like, I I hesitate to be like, oh, I want to learn science in this romance, because I probably don't actually want to learn science at all in this romance. But I do kind of wish that, like, if she's supposed to be this kick-ass scientist, that us, the viewer, we were getting some of the, I don't know. There's a balance here. I guess in like the TV adaptation, the movie adaptation of this, it would just be, this is where we would throw in the montages, right? Like, we would see her with her little lab coat and her goggles, and we would, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what that would be. So the fact that those moments aren't in the book, whatever. I mean, they are in the book. Like, they're there, but whatever. So she's at this conference presenting her work. And I have to say that I do think it's a little ridiculous that the entire scientific community is like bending over backwards for this like 36-year-old. And I also think that we don't really understand why Adam is supposed to be so great. You know what I mean? I don't really think that like Ali Hazelwood gave, like, we know that he has a high IQ and like he's gotten all these grants. So like we know that he is great, but like we don't know like what about him is like making him this amazing person that like Stanford. But that's the other thing, is like he's presented as like this amazing person where this entire conference is like bending over backwards to give an alleged mediocre scientist, Olive, a spot to present her research. So like they'll keep Adam happy, but at the same time his home institution is like willing to freeze his grant funds because they think he's going to leave. You know what I mean? Like, they aren't doing anything to like court him to keep him at Stanford. They're just like, we're just going to freeze your money. I don't work in academia, but that's like, there are a whole bunch of things that like don't add up in this. Like, the math doesn't math. You have Olive, who was like, oh, I watch rom-coms, I read romance novels, I know the tropes. There's always one bad Adam, there's always one bad. You just don't know, because, but at the same time, like, she's in the middle of like this massive miscommunication that I think is stupid, because Adam walked in and like heard her confessing to Malcolm that she's like in love with this person that she has a crush on, and like Olive has convinced herself that there's like some random mystery woman that Adam is in love with, even though he literally doesn't talk to anybody, and she didn't even think he had friends before Tom came into the picture. But that's where we're going. That's where this is what really inspired this clip, because we're at this convention, this little conference, not a convention, it's a conference. And Tom, this is the part that takes courage and balls, and Miss Ali Hazelwood is actually pissing me off, because the entire time this like sexual harassment has been played as a joke when Olive is the person doing it, because Olive is the main character. She's the person you're supposed to identify with. You're supposed to be rooting for her. And so like, good for her for kissing Adam at the beginning of the story, and good for her for like pushing against Adam's boundaries. But then in the third act of the book, in the middle of this miscommunication that really could just drive, you know, the conclusion, where you're like, you realize, oh, we had this miscommunication, but now you have her being like blackmailed to like fuck Tom, or she's never gonna have a career. It takes real balls to do that when your main character has been like very questionable, for you to introduce another character and be like, he's also a sexual harasser, but now it's a problem. Like, the entire time it should have been a problem. You know what I mean? Like, the entire time it should have been treated this seriously. But I do think that it's very, I don't want to say it's weird and it's suspect, but like, if your female character is going to be a sexual harasser and it's going to be played for jokes, I don't think you could introduce a male character and have him be a sexual harasser and have it be like this real serious moment. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's like another thing that Ali Hazelwood was getting off. I don't want to say getting off on, but she was like, oh, like, you know, Olive is small compared to Adam. Like, she's so diminutive or whatever because he's like this big hulking beast of a man. So like maybe she kissed him without his consent, but it was only a kiss. And now you have Tom, who hasn't even gone that far. He's like just threatened to blackmail her and like threatened to make sure she never works in science again. But again, it's also wild where it's like, I don't, saying it's wild doesn't make. Here's the thing. Do I believe that people like Tom exist? Yes. Do I think that people like Tom do things to people like Olive? Yes. I believe all of this is a very real situation, not only for women in STEM, but like women just like working at fucking McDonald's. I think that this is a problem. You know what I mean? But I think that it becomes hard to talk about in the context of this narrative when our protagonist is like, has, I don't want to say he's like guilty of the same thing, because I like there are, we can talk about levels, we can have like a real big discussion about it, right? But I think that at the end of the day, both of these characters have done questionable things in the vaguest possible terms, and one time it's been played for laughs, and we have a 300-page book detailing about the wacky hijinks that ensued when Olive was a sexual harasser, and now it's a very serious topic and it's like after school special. You know what I mean? Like, that's the disconnect for me. And I think that is weird. I think it's weird that one of the longest running gag moments is Olive being reported for being a sexual harasser, and now she's finding herself on the receiving end. And so I think that we really could have gotten to the same place in the narrative, and you still could have kept Tom being this person, because ultimately I don't think that like the little jokey jokes about Olive being a sexual harasser were ever funny. I don't think that they ever landed. I think we could have gotten to the same place without any of this happening. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can have a fake dating plot where we don't have that. And I think that because we never see Olive be that big, bold person she was at the beginning of the book where she kissed Adam in the first place, we don't need that moment, you know? Like, we could have done something without that. And I think that in the transition from fanfic to traditional published book, I am surprised that all of the moments where they're like, haha, I'm gonna report you for being a sexual harasser, jokey joke, haha, he was left in if this was ultimately what we were leading to. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just gonna have like a regular third act breakup where you get to September 29th, which was the day they already agreed to break up, and you get there and you just have them break up because that's what they agreed, and they are both under this impression that the other person is in love with somebody else, that's enough. You know, like, we don't need this added layer of, oh, your best friend, your friend since childhood, the one you went to prom with, you have all these fun, happy memories. He is also a sexual harasser who has like probably harmed a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, that's weird. It's weird. So that's where I am. I think up until now, I was really, I don't want to say I was leaning towards a 3-star, because I think I was always leaning towards a 2, but I was like understanding kind of the enjoyment level. You know, it's been an easy book to get through, but now I'm just like, it just feels mixed messagey. And it feels like Allie Hazelwood wasn't even aware that it was a weird streamed across. So that's what I don't like. Don't like that.
So it is early as fuck. And so I did not want to wake any of the people that I live with, either direct roommates or my neighbors around me, with the sound of my ranting. Because that's what I'm about to do, y'all. This book. This fucking book. So last night I talked to you guys about how I thought it was very bold. It took some massive amounts of courage for Allie Hazelwood to get up here and include this I don't want to call it random, because again, I think that this idea of a Tom-like figure in academia is very believable. And a Tom-like figure saying this to fucking Olive, like, very believable. All of that within the realm of possibility. And I thought it was, actually, we're not gonna go there yet. So I thought all that was believable, but it took, again, massive amounts of courage to include that plot line when the book is based on it's based on Olive being a weirdo. It's being a weird, and she, again, even at the very end of the book, She is never that bold person that she was at the beginning of the book. And even her, like, becoming a good public speaker is just because, like, Adam doesn't be like, oh, you're gonna be so good at it. Like, it's weird. At the end of the book, it is low-key only, like, she is able to do things because Adam is in the room. And, like, I know that's a tried and true romance situation, but it's like, if the arc of her, like, personal journey isn't even her becoming more comfortable just, like, herself, or, like, more bold herself after she does this, like, really stupid bold thing, and she is only capable of doing things when Adam is around, like, that's just a, like, I don't, what are we doing? What are we doing, Miss Hazelwood? What do we do? My bad, Dr. Hazelwood. What are we doing? What are we doing, Dr. Hazelwood? Wasn't a fan. Wasn't a fan of that. I will also die on the hill that all of her, like, the characters of color in the background are, like, very, like, they are all handled, I think, a little poorly. All of them, to a certain extent, I'm like, oh, the characters in the background only exist to support the main character, because that's really the definition of a supporting character. Like, these second tier characters all support Olive, like, that is their narrative function. But it feels weird when the entire cast of secondary characters are made up of people of color. Like, her best friend, Malcolm and Anne, and then Holden at the end. All three of these people of color exist solely within the narrative to, like, uplift Olive and remind her of how great she is and how she is, like, actually this capable, competent person. And it's just like, you mean to tell me that you're, like, Anne and Malcolm specifically, like, you found this Vietnamese woman and this black man, and they are just out here singing this white woman's praises, making her feel good about hers. Don't like it. I didn't like, specifically at the end of the book when, like, Holden is introduced, and, like, Holden and Malcolm as queer characters, and the what was that? What was that? What was that? What? Stop. Tell me that this wasn't. This is, I think, my biggest issue, because there is a certain way that the Star Wars girlies be writing these characters, and I feel like that's really what the root of the issue is. But again, like, it was just, it left me feeling icky inside when I was getting to the end of the book and I was reading about Anne and Malcolm and Holden, and I was like, don't like this at all, not a fan, don't care for it. And I stand by my statement that the idea that Anne, this is, like, what really kills me. Like, the whole book is predicated on this idea that Anne and Jeremy need to get together. And we don't really see Anne and Jeremy except for when they're at the conference, and then we get, like, a little throwaway line at the end. I mean, I think Jeremy is also in the sunscreen scene, but these are characters that are so not important. Like, I don't think Dr. Hazelwood cared about them bitches at all. But we get to the end of the book, and the sex scene. Y'all talk so much about him trying to, like, fit her boob in his mouth, but the whole thing is weird. At points, he's described as being all teeth and tongue, and he says, "I'm going to eat you." Like, no, what? I'm filming on my phone, so I can't look up my Goodreads. He's not saying I'm going to eat you, because that could be sexy. But he's like, I want to it was, like, this weird line that sounded very cannibalistic, only because, like, literally in the sentence before, it was like he was all teeth and tongue. Then he wanted to, like, feast upon her. And then he put his whole boob in her mouth. It's not like he said, I'm going to eat you, and started going to, like, eat her out. No, he, like, tries to fit her boob in his mouth. That's weird. Homegirl needed to run. Then y'all weren't lying when the plot became Beyonce's ego. It was too big. It was too wide. It won't fit. He got a big ego. We get it. Then he's, like, fucking her with, like, only half. It was weird. It was a weird sequence. Then he had, like, wedge himself in. And I was like, I don't know if the word wedge should be in a sex scene. Unless you're like wedging a pillow under you, you're trying to wedge some blankets and get comfortable. I don't know if I need to read being wedging, but whatever. We get there, she gets there, he gets there inside her, which I thought was bold from Miss Olive, because again, this is a woman who has had 5 boyfriends. Not 5 boyfriends, she's been on 5 dates in her entire life. And I don't think you need to like go on 300 dates to like just let the second man who's ever fucked you nut inside you. But I was actually gagged by that. Like, is that how the straights be well, we get like hints that like, what is her name? Olive. I mean, that Olive is like demisexual. So maybe I shouldn't be calling her a straight woman. I don't know. But is that how y'all be operating? Y'all just like, we've been fake dating for 6 months. So sure, you can just all up in. It was weird. And then he was like fingering it into her, which again, it could have been sexy, but I was reminded of the fact that she couldn't even take his finger. So I'm like, you're sitting there describing these sounds, and I'm just reminded of the fact that like, y'all have had like one real kiss, like that was actually a good kiss, that wasn't described as being a peck, a prolonged peck. It was described as being as a kiss, and now you just all up in. Again, it could have been sexy, could have been hot, but I was like, she can't even like take your fingers. And then he had like the shortest refractory period known to man. And then after all of that, so I'm like, okay, y'all are weird. He starts talking about her feet, and I was like, y'all lost me. I could care no fucks about the little boobage and his cannibalistic tendencies. But he started talking about her feet, and I said, y'all could have warned me. Y'all could have warned me about that one. Y'all are fake for not telling me. But then after all of that, right? Imagine that this is your life. You've been on 5 dates in your life. You had sex one time. Well, we don't know if it's actually one time, but I'm assuming based on who Olive is, it was actually the one time that she lost. So she's had sex one time. The second man that ever fucked her just like nutted all up in her. And the next morning, she's going to break up with him. Because remember, they're supposed to break up on the 29th. Which was the stupidest thing ever. Because despite the little, the moment with Tom and that fucking buffoonery, we are still going back to this idea that Olive has that the person that Holden told her about was some other random third woman. And it's like, if any other, main character in a romance novel said that shit, I could probably get with it. But Olive has told us, I don't say repeated, but she's told us at least twice, which is repeated. But I don't want to give the impression that she is like on every other page telling us that she's a romance girly. But we know that her and Malcolm watch rom-coms together. She had a whole little like back and forth with Adam about not watching romance novel. It might have been a thought process that she had in regards to a conversation that they were having about his hotel room. About being a romance girly, and she's all in, and she knows that fucking Adam thinks that she left someone else, but was talking about him, right? So she has all of this information, all of this data, right? Let's do science words. She has all of this data. She has a set of data that is pointing to, and not only this, but everybody in his life, in his orbit, has talked about how she is good with him. Like, they were like, oh, I thought he was going to be alone forever, but he has you. She has this entire mountain of data. Even if she doesn't want to believe that she's living a fucking romance novel, even though she had literally fake dating somebody and just fucked this man in the hotel room, even though there were 2 beds. They were double, though. So this was like a small-ass bed for this massive man, which I also call bullshit on. No massive man who is a mountain hulking figure of a person is going to get a hotel when he is God's gift to science and has money galore. He has a house in Northern California where he drives in to Stanford. All of this bullshit, and she's like, oh yeah, he loves somebody else. So even though we just did all of that last night, and he did all of that last night, and he was there for me last night when I was, all in my emotional bag, over this comment that Tom made. It's the 29th, so we're gonna break up. This is why the third act breakup is stupid. Because it forced, there's a lot of times in the narrative which I thought Dr. Hazelwood was specifically making Olive an idiot. Like, she was out here manufacturing and produces the world's finest dumb bitch juice. She skipped right over dumb bitch energy. She skipped right over being a consumer of the dumb bitch juice. She was the world's leading export of the product. There would be something just glaringly obvious right here, and she was a DW meme. That don't bother me. I can't read. I don't know how to read. The stupidest main character for this plot to work, which again I thought was weird, because then it becomes this thing where like Adam Carlson, who's like the greatest of the great, and he has all of these accolades and he has all of this attention and all of this renown, is out here living it up in the city with this dumb person who is not on his level, but he's like, oh yeah, you're not mediocre, you're a great scientist, you're this, you're that. And it's just like, could I get the science? Could we do something? And you know, Dr. Hazelwood would throw in these sciencey words, and we would see Olive working on the presentation, and we would get like a big word that we don't know. Like, I don't know what the fucking word that she couldn't pronounce was, but it's just like, I have very little, like the only context that I have is that Olive is working in pancreatic research, which is already cancer research, which is already more context than I feel like I have about Adam and why everybody is just like handing him money. Like, everybody is just tripping over themselves to give this man money. And it's just like, which is wild, because it wasn't even like Kylo Ren was like that great at being the Sith, you know? Like, he was kind of a whatever Sith person. It's just like, when there aren't very many Jedis running around and you can do magic, like, you get to be special. But here, like, Dr. Hazelwood went out of her way to make Adam this like imposing figure, because I guess he didn't get to like lead the Nazi army, so she had to let me okay, so yeah, overall this book was not good. It was a bad book, and I don't know what y'all like about it. As far as rating goes, I don't know. I'm gonna leave that to the Goodreads gods when I get there, but for right now, it's not looking too good. But like I said in my first little car clip yesterday, I have the ebook for Love on the Brain. I have an e-arc of it. I'm very happy I did not commit to that little blog tour. My hopes are not very high, but maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, because again, like I said, I've only seen negative things about this one, but all of the negative things, well, I don't say all. I think I saw 2 people DNF, or like was a low star and not a DNF. And the criticism that Mina gave it was the book was not about Marie Curie. It was supposed to be about this romance, but everything in the book was about Marie Curie. And I'm hoping that like maybe the stuff about Marie Curie will relate to the plot in some way. And because what I wanted the science. I did want the science, and I wasn't getting the science. So maybe that means I'll get science and Love on the Brain, and I'll understand like why these 2 people are like respected in their fields, or why they're where they are, how they something. But I'm gonna go, because this has been a really long clip, and I don't want this 2-book vlog to be some massive undertaking when I have to go to edit it. What is up, you guys? So we're back here again, about to head in. I can't even say I'm about to head into work, because I'm here a little early, so I could film this little clippy clip in case things ran long, because I talked for like 13 minutes this morning. But I started Love on the Brain by Dr. Ali Hazelwood, and so far, I'm enjoying it a lot more. This isn't like a 5-star read by any means. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star read. In these hate, enemies, rival situationships, which the first book was, this book is, and I think at least one of the novellas that they're putting out this year, Dr. Ali Hazelwood clearly has a hard-on for an academic rivals and enemies and miscommunication that leads to this, like, we're not on the same page, so I think you hate me. That's like their bag, and that's very much not my bag. I find that to be very childish. I find it to be very childish, specifically when these are two grown-ass adults who... And it's not that, like, I've never been in a situation where I thought a coworker said something that they didn't say, and so I just don't fuck with them. But I also then don't harbor romantic interest in them and have like, that's another part that's, like, really taking me out. Like, there was a scene very early on, because again, I'm only 14% in, where B is confronted with Liam after they've been estranged for a while, because they haven't really communicated since they both left graduate school. They're both gone on to pursue careers and live their lives, and they're being brought together by this new job opportunity. And so that's fine with me. I mean, I also think it's very clear that the Twitter account that she runs and the Twitter account that he runs are going to, like, link up and be besties. I also don't know how believable it is that, like, these two random people who went to graduate school together both run highly successful, very niche academic Twitter accounts that have, like, millions of followers and, like, internet besties and, like, DM each other. I don't know. I mean, on like one hand, this is like another thing, was like when characters, she did this in the Love Hypothesis too, where Olive and Adam had this chance meeting years before the start of the story, and then over the course of the story, our main character had to realize that, like, that was them. Like, this, like, mistake, I don't know if I would call mistaken identity or, like, secret identity or whatever, like, also seems to be something that Ali Hazelwood really enjoys that I personally just don't vibe with. But here, I think that the pieces are fitting together more objectively good. Like, they are objectively well fitted, and they don't feel like a waste of my time or a general person's time. They feel well conceived and well executed. So on that level, I'm having a good time. But on, like, a general, like, what are we doing here? Like, this is firmly a 3-star. We also have, like, this other, people have talked about this on Twitter, where Ali Hazelwood clearly likes, like, this giant man, tiny girl aesthetic. Love that for Dr. Hazelwood. It's also, it's not really my bag, but, like, that's, I think, the least offensive trope that we can have, unless there's another scene where he has to, like, wedge himself inside her. Don't need that. I hope she has found a new word besides wedge, because I'm really not looking forward to reading back-to-back donkey dicks wedging themselves into places they don't fit. That's just me. So overall, like I said, I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying this more. I find that I understand these characters and their relationship to each other and their relationship to science in a better way. Also, I do want to say that I think it's a little I'm not a scientist, right? But, like, I do think it's a little ridiculous that, like, both of these protagonists, like, the worst thing that they can imagine is, like, being called a mediocre scientist. Like, maybe that's, like, really big in science communities. And I guess if I was an author and someone called me mediocre, like, I would be kind of pressed about it. But I don't know. I feel like we need something that has a little more heft to it. Like, mediocre, like, being called mediocre is not that massive an insult. It should not be catastrophically life ruining, but that's just where I stand on that. So that is what it is. I'm gonna go. So I've read a little bit more, not enough to update fully, but I'm pretty sure I was calling this man Liam in my last update, and his name is Levi. So editing Monty isn't gonna, like, throw up Levi on the screen if I was calling him Liam, but just know that I know his name is Levi, and I am still enjoying this more. I think that Ali Hazelwood is giving me kind of, like, I still wish this was dual perspective, but I like the miscommunication that's happening here more than I like the miscommunication that was happening in the last book. And I feel like what was happening, like, what their little tension or whatever, that bullshit it hasn't really been like resolved, but it's in a place now that I feel good about, that I am enjoying more, and has the potential to be entertaining, because I think going forward the dynamic is going to be shifted based on what's happening. But like I said, that's really all I wanted to say, was that I know his name is Levi and not Liam, and I'm gonna go and I will check back in later. I feel like I have updated Love on the Brain solely in this specific parking spot at work, but it is what it is. Don't know what it is. I will be wrapping up the vlog at home, so I will be talking about Love on the Brain somewhere that isn't my car in the middle of the Kansas heat. But that day is just not today. I'm at like 67% now. Things are finally starting to heat up. I hesitate to call her book slow burn, because in both instances, both Love on the Brain and The Love Hypothesis, our main female character is constantly being shown as having the hots for her love interest, and it's not until like the 60% mark that we get a little bit of, you know, teasing as to the thing. But what I liked about this is I liked how it, like, you could actually see the buildup on, I don't want to say, again, like, I hesitate to say both sides, because again, in the single perspective world that we are living in, for whatever reason, it does feel a tad bit, it doesn't feel one-sided, but I only get to see the buildup on her side. Even though I do think that here, Professor Hazelwood, Dr. Hazelwood, whatever I'm supposed to call her, she is doing a better job of giving me those things, from giving me, what am I trying to say here? Levi's perspective within the interactions that he has with B. So it's working better. Still would prefer a dual perspective. I think that would like kind of fall apart, because it's supposed to be another one of those like rivals, enemies to lover situations that has been very clearly one-sided the whole time. I do think that here it was better handled. I think that the like eneminess of their interaction, or the perceived eneminess, was with a broader group of people. Like, yes, our love interest thought that he hated her, but so did like literally everybody that knew them at the time that she found, like when they were in grad school and he did things and she was like, oh, he hates me, everyone around her thought the same thing. So I think that like it feels less like the character is just delusional and like making shit up, when it's like, no, objectively this person was behaving in a way that was a little iffy, a little questionable. A lot of people felt that way. So I do appreciate that. The thing that is bothering me, there's two things. There's three things I could mention that aren't like super spoilery. The first is, we had a description of a duck penis. Could have gone my entire life without a description of a duck penis. Now we also have B being like white vegan TM. Like, here's the thing. I am a vegan. I've been a vegan now for going on like 2 years, I want to say. That feels right. In like December, it'll be 2 years. It's on my calendar, so it'll remind me. The thing about this is, like, there are some discussions of their little veganism, because her love interest, Levi, is also a vegan, that just don't matter to me. Like, they have this whole conversation about like what made you a vegan, and he was talking about like this chicken he knew, and she was talking about a baby goat, and I'm just like, y'all are weird. Fucking B, I think she actually needs to see a medical professional, because apparently she like faints all the damn time. She's fainted at least like 3 or 4 times in the narrative. Very concerned for her. But also, like, anytime she sees roadkill, she starts sobbing. And that's just not relatable content to me. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because I was like a vegetarian for like, I am, what am I? I am 26 now, for like the next couple of weeks until I turn 27. And from like the age of like 14 to 20, 3, I was a vegetarian. So like almost a decade of my life, I was a vegetarian. And I've been vegan now for like 2 years. I dabbled with meats in the interim. Because to me, it's really not that deep. Like, I'm sorry, like the animal suffering, the animals dying, like it's really not that deep. I think we can have discussions about like the environmental impact of factory farming and sustainability and this and that. But at the end of the day, like me seeing some dead roadkill is not, like, it doesn't move me and it doesn't feel like weird and quirky. I'm just kind of like, girl, you need to go back to your therapist. Like, you need to see the therapist about that one. Please and thank you. Also, some of the little transitional moments are not the greatest. There was another layer of miscommunication in this book that wasn't related to the, what was that, the hate, like the enemies to lovers aspect, that I also thought was really well handled until this most recent transition. So, in the book, B has this perception of Levi and his relationship status and what is happening there. And he's talking to her about somewhat part of that. And his friend, who I'm like, but weren't you, it was weird. But they're having a conversation. And the subject of this conversation, that person is dead. And he's talking about how, you know, he wants to, like, he's kind of involved with the project that they're both working on in order to honor this dead person that he knew, who was like his childhood best friend, right? Great little touching, moving moment. And then they are like horny as fuck. And I'm just like, you were literally just talking about a dead man. Literally like 2 paragraphs ago. So like 3 sentences ago, you were mourning the loss of this friend. And now I'm reading about your erection rubbing up against her. And I'm just like, this is weird. Y'all are weirdos. And there's something about how Ali Hazelwood writes sex scenes that makes, like, I'm very nervous. Like, I was so happy when we got Saved by the Bell in the last one, because there was a moment before this that was actually appropriate for them to, and they didn't. So you hate to see it. Like I said, would have been appropriate. And so now I'm very nervous to have Siri read this to me. Also, side note, I guess it's like the 4th little side note detour situation. There is a side character in this book, Rocio. That's how Siri is saying it. So Rocio and Kaylee, I need their book. I need that book. I need to read it. Would like to see it. We're going to ignore the part where I said the next time I updated, I was going to be at home. Well, I am technically. I just got back to my apartment complex. But I need to talk about the smut in Miss Ali Hazelwood. In the last one, I talked about the incident. And apparently nobody uses condoms in Ali Hazelwood's world because they've both been, quote, celibate for so long that, like, condoms aren't necessary. And, like, you do what you want to do. But I don't... I've never had an STD, but I don't really know if you being celibate, like, clears anything up if you haven't done anything to clear stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I guess if you've been celibate, like, you would know if you had something and you would have taken steps to do it. But again, I don't know no symptoms because I'm not in a 9th grade health education class. So some of the hand waviness is weird to me. But also, I think it's very... Let me not project this on to Professor Hazelwood, but her characters in both of the books that I've read clearly have some kind of size kink. I will say that I don't recall anything being wedged anywhere. There was talk about it being big, and of course it was because both sets of characters, there's some kind of like size kink bullshit happening. I talked about that on my Goodreads update, where in this book, Levi was being described as, quote, a Victorian mansion. I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to mean, but that's what he looked like. But they both have the size kink and they have that bodily fluid kink because it was really giving gay porn when Levi was like, he had finished in her mouth and was like, show me. And he just was like, yeah, it was giving gay. But love that for Levi. Love that for her. They all seem very happy and very copacetic. Although, and I said that Olive was like the mass producer of dumb bitch juice. B is trying it. She is like talking about how they're destined. She moved on from like, oh, where he hates me to, oh, he likes me, but now we're like fuck buddies, even though it's very clear that Levi wants to be something more than a fuck. Like, she just seems like so oblivious, and it feels very strange to me that they don't talk this part out. Also, I want to say that this book has one of the most messiest relationship messes that I've ever seen. So at the beginning of the book, back when Miss B was thinking that Levi hated her, she was also under the impression that he was married to some girl he has a picture of in his office. But the picture is like him and her and this little girl. And so B thought that Levi was married and had a child. It is revealed that he used to date the person in the photo. Her name is Lily, I believe, and her daughter's name is something that I really don't care because it's not his. But so Levi and Lily used to date before Levi went off to grad school. When Levi went off to grad school, this man broke up with her, saying that he found a girl in grad school that he was in love with, which is wild because that girl is supposed to be B, but he never even tells her. So like, this man was in a serious relationship and broke up with the person he was in the serious relationship with because he was in love with B, but he never told B that he was in love with her all those years ago. But then it gets stupider because the girl he was dating starts dating his best friend. And Levi is all happy for him because, you know, he's in love with B, but he's not telling him. And so the girlfriend that he used to have marries his best friend, gets pregnant with his child. Then that best friend dies. And Levi becomes like a pseudo step parent to this little girl and is like trying to do the project that he and B are on together to like memorialize his dead friend. And so now he like watches this little girl and he hangs out with his ex-girlfriend. It's weird. It's weird. It's foolish. It's childish. And I want to know why. This is also like the second friend situation that's very enmeshed. In The Love Hypothesis, you had An and Jeremy. Here you have Levi and Lily and his dead friend. But you also have B. B only had like one friend apparently all those years ago when she was engaged to this man. And her friend fucked her fiance behind her back. So it's like, I want to know what about friends fucking people's partners Ali Hazelwood is drawn to including in her books. Because it's been present. And it's been a pretty significant plot point every single time. And between that being a plot point every time, the enemies to lovers miscommunication being a plot point every time, I just want to know like what else Ali Hazelwood has. Maybe those novellas are different. Maybe there's some kind of like different dynamic at play. But if there isn't, that's 5 times in 2 years they've written the same thing. And you know, you could do whatever the fuck you want to do as an author, far be it for me to tell you what you can and can't do. But I do think that, you know, if we're going to continue to, I'm just not meant to have that on here apparently. But if we're going to continue to include Ali Hazelwood in the culture, I need her to contribute something that she hasn't already contributed. It's like, we tasted the mac and cheese, ma'am. Bring us something different. Give us some coleslaw, some fried chicken, maybe a beverage. Bring us some iced tea. You know, like, switch it up a little bit. Like, she just, here's mac and cheese every time. And it's like, okay, we have 5 mac and cheeses on the table. And it's not even different. You know, it's not like, oh, this is mac and cheese with provolone, and this is like ghost pepper, and this one got bacon bits. It's just weird. It's very, what is happening here? So yeah, this one I still like more than The Love Hypothesis. It's not my favorite romance I've ever read, but I'm having like a decent enough time, except for the smut. The smut, it sends me every time. It reminds me a little bit of the one Tessa Bailey that I read, Fix Her Up. And I would say that they're similarly descriptive. And while I cringe reading, I think it is for the culture. I think that is not weird sex scenes like it could be. It could be a lot worse. So I do think that if you are into it, then Allie Hazelwood is giving it to you.
Welcome. We've made it to the end of the video. I have finished Love on the Brain. As promised, we are back with the good quality camera, and I get to talk about it for a little bit here with you guys now. So yesterday in my car, I think I wrapped up at like 80%, and so from there to the end of the book, it was a lot of actually plot development. I do want to commend Love on the Brain for having a really strong central plot in this like NASA collaboration situation. I said this on my reading sprints last night, but part of my issue with the single perspective romance is, to me, I feel like you have to work really hard to differentiate between why this should be a romance and not just like general fiction. I understand that general fiction will oftentimes have another plot in addition to the romance, but there I feel like it just works better. And I think that here it did a nice balancing act of giving us the NASA collaboration and the stuff that was happening there that was impacting Levi and B being together. So that was good. But I also feel like because of that plot, we were able to get like really organic insights into Levi, where his head was at and why he was doing the things that he was doing in a way that we didn't really get with the love hypothesis. Like the love hypothesis to me felt extremely one-sided, and the one side we did get was just frustrating to read from because Olive is just a garbage person. I'm sorry. Like I just hate her with a burning passion. I don't know what y'all like about her. She was annoying. And it's not even that B is less annoying. I just felt that her being annoying was balanced with like Levi also being like, bitch, why are you drinking the dumb bitch juice? Like I felt that B was being, it wasn't even just Levi, her friend Rossio, like there were people in her life that were calling her out. I do want to say that the final act of the book, like the last 5%, so from like 90 to 95, there was like this really rocky, almost, I wouldn't call it quite a thriller, but it was melodrama. That's what it was. It was like there was a character who showed up. Eventually what happens is like the project that they're working on, there's a problem, and it's a big problem. Somebody has a seizure, and she's like, okay, clearly it was my fault because I was the one who was responsible for like the programming of like the brain patterns and like making sure this didn't happen. So clearly I'm just going to remove myself from the situation and I'm going to quit my job. And there's like a scene at in this 95-ish area where somebody shows up at NASA and there's a gun and they're going to like kill her, except make it look like a suit. Like it was just off the walls bonkers. Like there were just like these little digs throughout this book that were like, okay, we were doing really good, Professor Hazelwood, Dr. Allie, we were there. What are you doing? Like that just kept ratcheting my enjoyment down a little. I do want to say that this book, I hesitate to call it a slow burn because I don't think it really is a slow burn in like the truest sense of the word. But these characters do not get together for a very long time. I would say like 96% of the book, they are technically not dating and not technically in a fully formed relationship, which is why I think we get the epilogue that we do, which I thought was garbage. Like, I don't want to call it garbage. It's just not for me. It's very standard, typical epilogue that you see people talk about in romances on Twitter. So it was that. Didn't work for me, didn't really care for it, just because they spent so much of the book like not technically dating that being the epilogue just felt unneeded, unnecessary, wasn't for me. But overall, I definitely enjoyed Love on the Brain a lot more than I enjoyed The Love Hypothesis. And having read Love on the Brain, I would definitely be willing and a little eager, a little teensy bit eager to read another Ali Hazelwood book. I think I would do it. I think I would go 3 for 3 with Ali Hazelwood, which is, I think, unique. I don't think I've read three. Oh, yes, I have. No, I didn't finish that Max Walker book. So I don't think I've ever read like 3 romance books from an author. It's not a new favorite by any means, but I do think that this was more. I would give it 2.5 stars. I think I might round up to a 3 on Goodreads. I haven't decided yet. But it was a solid, fun time. I liked Levi a lot, even though he was weird. He was weird. And B was frustrating, but not as frustrating as Olive, so I liked her. And I still want Kaylee and Rossio's book. I still want it. I would even take the novella. I still want it, even, especially after everything that happened. I need it. So yeah, that was my experience reading Ali Hazelwood this past week. So thanks for coming along with me on the journey. If you've made it to the end of this video, I'm going to try and find a little sciencey emoji that we can drop down in the comment section. But that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again soon with another video. But until then, and until next time, bye.